Salt Lake City provided some exciting action to kick off the 2021 Monster Jam season. With 4 different overall event champions in 5 events, we have a lot to cover and a lot to discuss here on the show. We'll also reveal who we think is on fire or on ice heading into the Stadium Championship Series beginning in Houston on January 30th. This is the Monster Jam Teardown. Welcome, Monster Jam fans, to another episode of the Monster Jam Teardown. I'm your host, Joshua Lee, and joining me is our analyst this week, Wayne Chiaki, Joshua Tavares, and visiting Joshua Tavares is Josh Gajewski, so we're bringing him onto the show. Guys, welcome.
How's it going?
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Now, our usual fourth analyst, Danny McGinley. Last week he was working. This week he is on vacation in Disney World, so he is unable to be here. But he is still a part of the team, and he will be back after this week for our Stadium Championship Series preview. But today we're recapping all the action from Salt Lake City. But first, we have a couple news stories to get through, the first of which being a huge event announcement, as Monster Jam will be returning to Orlando, Florida for 3 action-packed events, February 27th and 28th, to continue the Stadium Championship Series. And I know, Josh, this is big for you. You live near Orlando. You're going to be going to the events. Talk about how it feels to have Monster Jam back in Orlando for a regular show, especially after the last time they were in Orlando was Monster Jam World Finals 20.
Yeah, I know it's a big step for not only the Monster Jam community, but everyone in Florida, because, you know, Monster Jam is huge in Florida, whether it be Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, or Miami. It's just like it draws the biggest crowds, in my opinion, you know, the loudest of fans that I can, you know, say from years past experience. You know, we get the best shows, in my opinion. We get like the cool moments that we can see, you know, drivers put the trucks to its limits there in any Florida stop. But, you know, anytime I get to see a show in Orlando, my hometown, you know, it brings, you know, somewhat of joy to me.
Now, Wayne, you live very close to Orlando in Tampa. How are you thinking about going to the events, and how excited are you to have Monster Jam return to Florida as well?
Josh, I'm pumped to be going to Orlando. I'm hopefully going to be going. I think I am going to make plans to go because it's pretty close to home, about an hour and 45 minutes away of a drive, but it's worth going for 3, not just one of the show, but we get 3 shows in Orlando, 2 shows the first day and 1 for the second. I am pumped, Josh, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to go. I think I will. And I'm looking forward to seeing all my friends and Monster Jam family there. It's been a long time since we've seen each other.
Now, Gajewski, like Josh mentioned, there's a lot of great action that happens in Florida for Monster Jam, and they're coming off of a 3-week stint in Houston. How do you think the athletes are going to react from going from inside NRG Stadium in Houston now to an outside stadium, Camping World Stadium, in the hot Florida sun?
Well, you know, that dirt's going to change whether they're inside the dome or they're outside. It's always going to be different. So week to week, even being stuck in the dome 3 weeks in a row, the dirt's not going to feel the same each show. So, you know, they're just going to have to be able to adapt and overcome whatever they can at whatever gets thrown at them at that moment in time.
Now, the other piece of news that we're going to cover before we head into Salt Lake City recap is Monster Jam Steel Titans 2, the second game coming out from Rainbow Studios and THQ Nordic, the official Monster Jam video game. Announcement trailer dropped today, and a couple of changes as well. They've already announced that they're going to be changing up the physics a little bit, but on the other end, they'll also be adding online multiplayer, more Monster Jam trucks, including World Champion Avenger, Monster Mutt Poodle, the famous Spin Master truck, and so many other new and old Monster Jam trucks. Josh, starting with you and Gajewski, how excited are you guys for the new Monster Jam video game?
It's very awesome to see not only Monster Jam bringing, you know, back Steel Titans in its new form. You know, we got some awesome trucks returning like Jurassic Attack, Stone Crusher, you know, trucks that have been in past Monster Jam games. You know, it's really cool not only for, you know, us Monster Jam fans to have those independent names in Monster Jam video games like that. You know, it's like a more or less like a culture thing in a sense. You know, we don't really think that it would work out like that for, you know, per se a independent standpoint. You know, they have to get that contract or something like that in the form. They have to work out an agreement to get put into a video game like that or to get their truck made in a toy form. So for that, it's pretty cool.
My thing is I just love seeing the Spin Master influence. It's cool seeing like this little toy that you have that you can just move around on your desk and then you can go play with it in a video game. That's always crazy to me that people can do that.
Now, Wayne, you were my colleague on the Steel Titans Sports League in the past season when we broadcasted their events live on their YouTube channel, and they were huge on Monster Jam Steel Titans. I even did some work with the crew over at Monster Jam Steel Titans, and now they're coming back for their second game. First game is always a little bit of a challenge for any developer to really get used to, but now this is their second time around. They've already announced some improvements. How excited are you to really get to that competition aspect of Monster Jam Steel Titans 2, especially with that new online multiplayer feature?
Josh, I'm really pumped. I've been looking forward to Monster Jam Steel Titans 2 for quite a while now. Ever since the first release and a few months into it, I've been looking forward to the second one because as I look at this game, a lot of people criticize it, but I think they did a fantastic job for the first game they created. They told me they wanted to go bigger and better for Steel Titans 2 and that they wanted to do a lot more on the first game, but they just didn't have the time to. They had to get it out. And I think a lot of the issues that the community have been having with the game are going to be repaired coming up in a few months. But I'm hoping to get some early access to the game, show it off to the fans and viewers. And I'm looking forward to it, especially the multiplayer aspect. Josh, I think it's going to make the Steel Titans Sports League and anything else that happens even easier because now you have a multiplayer system, which the fans have been requesting for quite a while. So if it goes well, if the system works and the game is much more improved, which I think it is, has awesome trucks, I think it's going to be a great release.
You can pre-order Monster Jam Steel Titans 2 right now, coming out for Xbox One, PS4, Nintendo Switch, Steam on PC, and Google Stadia for release on March 2nd. Now it's time to get to all the action from Salt Lake City. A bit of a mixed weekend. We saw 4 unique overall event champions by Event 4, and the only repeat event champion was Adam Anderson in Megalodon. We'll get to all the overall event recap here in a bit, but right now we're going to recap Monster Energy Racing, and I think domination is an understatement for Todd LeDuc. For the first 3 events, he was completely unbeatable in that Monster Energy Monster Jam truck. He was finally knocked out by Adam Anderson and Megalodon, who took the remaining 2 Monster Energy Racing wins of the weekend when he defeated Todd LeDuc in Event 4 and Bryce Kenny and the Great Clips Mohawk Warrior in Event 5. Josh, is starting with you guys. I mean, we followed the Salt Lake City events throughout the weekend, and Todd LeDuc had that huge streak of racing wins and even ending the weekend at 12-2. I mean, that is such a great racing record, especially for somebody who hasn't raced in an arena in, I believe, a couple of years.
Yeah, I think we all underestimated Todd in the arena aspect of things. We're not really used to seeing Todd in an arena setting like that. So to see him dominate Monster Energy Racing like that is definitely something that I can say Todd really adapts to quickly. Todd is a racer, by heart. So having that background is definitely an advantage to him. And, coming into Salt Lake City, he definitely opened a lot of eyes for us. He definitely represented Monster Energy well.
Not just Todd having his racing background that he has, he's able to maneuver the truck in ways that we couldn't even fathom. And it just proves how amazing of a driver he is and what a talent he is that Feld has.
Now, Wayne, Jeff Sin is back as Todd LeDuc's crew chief. He was the crew chief in Arlington as well, back and with the wrench in his hand for Salt Lake City, and he had that truck dialed in. And I mean, it just looked like he would go into a corner, plant that left front tire, and get it turned 90 degrees to make the corner. I mean, we just saw a different side of Todd LeDuc that we haven't seen in a while.
Right, and Jeff is one of the best crew chiefs in the industry. I got to see him at a few of the independent shows that were out of Monster Jam while he was out of work, and he got back in Arlington, and ever since, he's been really helping Todd LeDuc set up the truck, give him information on how he's doing, how to drive the corners, and I'm surprised he did amazing in racing, and I'm proud of him, man. I was rooting for Todd the weekend that we had Salt Lake City, and he did incredible, as we could see from the racing stats. He took home a couple of wins, and it's thanks to his crew chief, Jeff Sims. He's an awesome guy, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he could do in the future.
Now, Adam Anderson in Megalodon was the other racing winner from the weekend. He sweeped both events on Sunday, finished with a racing record of 8-3. And I mean, the Joshes, we've had Adam Anderson in Megalodon since Arlington. This was his sixth and seventh event, I should say, behind the wheel of Megalodon. And there was a good portion there where he wasn't doing an event where he wasn't flipping over in Megalodon. And it looks like he finally got used to that chassis, got used to the body, and really showed up on Sunday. And we'll get a little bit further into that when we go over the overall event championships. But Adam Anderson finally getting Megalodon under him like he needed to before the Stadium Championship Series.
Yeah, coming into Salt Lake City, Adam said himself that he was pretty nervous representing Megalodon in a setting like this. He's not used to arenas like that, but he has done pretty successful in arenas in the past years. So, Adam has to take some time to get used to the track and the setting for him to really get, going there. So Megalodon was definitely a transition, and it was definitely something for him to get used to. So I can, guarantee coming into the coming events like Houston and Orlando, we're going to see a different Adam and hopefully a great Adam.
I can second that, but Adam just being the driver he is, it only takes him so little time to actually get used to a truck. Where any other driver, it could take weeks upon weeks, and he's done it in a matter of what you said, 6 or 7 events. That's just astronomical. And it just shows how much of a great talent he is.
Now, Wayne, obviously, Adam Anderson is a world champion. He's known in racing and he's known in freestyle, but I mean, we saw it in Arlington. I believe he may have made one semifinal, and that was it. He was out in round 2 in Megalodon. He just couldn't get that fish under him. Now that he does, are you looking at him as sort of a good pick for the Stadium Championship Series, or do you think once he gets back in that stadium, it's going to be another learning curve for Adam in Megalodon?
I believe it can be another learning curve. It depends on Adam's performance. I think he has to get used once again the stadium scene, because coming into Salt Lake City, he did really well for what he had and the experience he had. He's been in arenas a couple of times, but not as much as Kristen Anderson and these other people that are used to the small floor and the small racing patterns, and you have to have a lot of momentum in a little circuit. So going into the big stadiums, I think he's definitely going to be a little more dominant, and I think we're going to see a little bit more of the 2016 Adam Anderson.
Going down the rest of the racing records, Bryce Kenny 5-5, David Olfert 2-5, Eric Swanson 4-5, Kristen Anderson 1-5, Travis Groth 2-5, and Aaron Basil 1-5 on the weekend. That will conclude Monster Energy Racing. We move on to the Great Clips 2-Wheel Skills Challenge, and the domination there over the weekend was Kristen Anderson in Gravedigger, and I think that was a bit of a shock for a lot of us. We knew Kristen was going to be sort of a contender, but maybe more in BKT Tires freestyle. She had 3 wins out of 5 events in 2-wheel skills. I mean, this was unprecedented for Kristen Anderson, especially with the lineups she's had to deal with since her debut in 2017 in this 2-wheel skills challenge.
Yeah, she's been picking up the 2-wheel skills game relatively quickly as of late. In the last couple of years, Kristen has been excelling in that kind of competition. Representing Gravedigger is, a struggle in its own, but to do, 2-wheel skills in Gravedigger and having to do really well in it is another challenge in its own. So, Tyler Menninga is one driver that can really do that in the 2-wheel skills competition, and Kristen having to follow that and other drivers alike is something that she has to really, get behind. And this past weekend when she was in Salt Lake, she did, open up a lot of eyes, and she opened up mine for sure. So I hope that she does really well in the coming events in Houston.
And actually, to second what Josh is saying about Kristen, is she was my pick heading into the weekend. I told him right before the weekend, I was like, she's one of the only ones that actually has the arena skills, like, out of all that lineup. So, she just was bound to explode and get a bunch of wins here, and she ended up doing just that.
And weighing the second best in 2-wheel skills was Adam Anderson in Megalodon. Third best, Todd LeDuc in Monster Energy. They both had 2-wheel skills challenge wins over the weekend. But Kristen Anderson was really pulling off those arena moves like the Joshes were saying. I mean, she was doing those reverse poppers to wheelies. She was doing those sky wheelies, slamming it down the back end and walking it. I mean, we saw a Kristen Anderson that compared to, she had on tour in 2020, Colton Eichelberger. 2019, she had Blake Granger on her tour. 2018, going all the way that far back, I believe she didn't have a Max D there, but she had Tristan England and Earthshaker. I mean, she had so many great 2-wheel competitors on her lineup. It was almost shadowing over Kristen Anderson and what she could really do in that Monster Jam truck.
Yeah, and I think from this, she really learned from all these drivers that she's been competing with and throughout the years how to pull off these incredible 2-wheel skill hits, now skills. And she's shown us. I mean, one of my coolest parts of the show was when she did a sky wheelie and then she just stood it on the wheelie bar and popped it in reverse, did a few pops with the gas, and then put it in reverse and did another wheelie, which was incredible. And she really shown that she's mastered the poppers to the wheelies. She's done really incredible with that. And that's really what got her the win at Salt Lake City. It takes a lot of skill to do these hits. The other drivers were trying moonwalks and all kinds of different things. They couldn't quite get it. And Kristen Anderson was able to pull off these moves that the fans wanted to see. And you saw by the impact on her score, she was really dominant. And I think it's because she's been in the Arena Series. Looking forward to seeing what she could do in the future.
Speaking of scores, JudgesZone.com, presented by Great Clips, was back for all of the judged competitions, and the average score for Kristen Anderson on the weekend, 8.171. Second best was Adam Anderson, a 7.309. I mean, those are pretty high average scores, because I think we may have had maybe an 8.3 early on in 2020 when the World Finals lineups were originally released in February, but we don't see averages really get up that high, especially considering the rest of the athletes are all in the 6 and 5s and lower. I mean, Kristen was consistent even when she wasn't winning the two-wheel skills competition.
Yeah, Kristen is consistent, in any competition that she's in, whether she wins or loses, she's really a winner in a sense. She places relatively high in any competition. So for two-wheel skills in Salt Lake, I think that's one of the competitions that she really excelled in the most, mainly because all the other drivers, I would say, aren't used to doing, moonwalks or poppers in the arena setting. So for them to really get, going in that kind of aspect is kind of hard because they're so used to a bigger floor to ride out, let's say a moonwalk or something like that. So Kristen is used to the small space, and she's used to Salt Lake, so that's an advantage for her.
Just a second, Kristen, she's got her moves down to a science now, and a lot of these other drivers are just trying to still figure out what they want to do all the time and try to get in the groove of being able to do a specific move. That's why you see them go for the same move so often, so that they can perfect it and try to give you the best show possible, and I think she's done just that.
Wayne, I'll give a little bit of a different question over to you. Now that we're going back into stadiums for the Stadium Championship Series, Kristen Anderson is going to have to go up against her brother, Adam, her other brother, Ryan Anderson, and we're adding Tom Mentz into that mix now. And even I'll go as far as saying Bari Musauer and Zombie, Lindsay Reed and Scooby-Doo is coming back. She hasn't been in a stadium two-wheel competition since 2017. I mean, do you think she's going to keep this two-wheel momentum up, or do you think that going into the stadiums against those incredibly tough competitors, including the only two-wheel skills challenge champion, that she's going to fall a little bit down the leaderboard?
Josh, that's a tough one to answer because we saw Kristen Anderson at Arlington do some pretty good skills hits, but I think the moonwalks are really going to dominate the Paxton poppers and walking them out because these fans like to see these incredible moonwalks. But sometimes I can be wrong. As you saw at Salt Lake City, nobody could perfect the moonwalk. And Kristen Anderson, with her consistency with the poppers, walking out wheelies, and really showing the fans more of a skill than just hitting the gas and getting into a sky wheelie, I think that could come into the play coming into the Stadium Series. But it's all going to depend on what the fans want to see and what the drivers next to her are going to do. She has a lot of competition on the Stadium Series, and it's not going to be as easy to take wins as it is in the Arena Series like Salt Lake City. We'll have to see what happens.
Moving on to the donut competition, and Adam Anderson had the domination in this competition where he took 3 wins out of the weekend, average score of an 8.481 in those 5 events. And Josh, this was where we really started to see Adam Anderson come alive in Megalodon, because I believe he won on Friday night, and that was the first time we were seeing Adam really win something in Megalodon. And this is his first time really feeling that win energy from the fans in a good while, because he didn't have any wins in Arlington. How crucial was this win for Adam Anderson? Because he needed that win, that sort of validation that, okay, I can win in Megalodon. And then we saw him go out, win 2 more donut competitions, then 2 overall event championships on Sunday.
Yeah, I believe it was very crucial for Adam because, they'll say donut competitions for him are pretty, standard for him because he's so used to, whipping that truck around and doing some fast donuts and Gravedigger. So to transition out to Megalodon, it was not, per se something that would be hard for him. But the only thing that would probably be hard is the space that he had to work with. And I'm pretty sure the other drivers were really, on the downside of that. They weren't really used to the tight space that they had to do the donuts in. So for Adam, that's one thing he really excelled in, and he got those donuts working pretty good.
Yeah, it always helps when your dad is probably one of the best donut slingers I've ever seen. Dennis could throw that truck anywhere, and he's just learned from the best. Adam's been driving for so long that, you put him anywhere, he could probably do a donut.
Now, Wayne, moving on to the other side of the donut competition was David Olfert and Jurassic Attack. And that brand new Jurassic Attack truck, brand new chassis, brand new body, it was ready to go in Salt Lake City. And David Olfert showed up in the donut competition. He grabbed 2 wins with an average score of 8.027. So even when he wasn't winning, he was so close to grabbing those wins. And we'll talk more about David Olfert when we get into BKT Tires Freestyle. But specifically in the donut competition, David Olfert really showed up as one of the main contenders in an arena donut competition.
Yeah, David did a really good job. He is another guy that's really good at getting the truck into a good rotation and being able to pull out these amazing cyclones. It's one of his specialties. You just got to match the gas after you get it into that rotation, or else you could flip the truck. Like we saw with Todd LeDuc, he didn't quite get into the rotation, did a little bit of a sidewall, and unfortunately ended on the lid. But David, I was rooting for him for overall because we saw the new Jurassic Attack truck. Like you said, we're going to talk about later. And I saw him on the independent scene. He's an incredible driver, has a good throttle rhythm. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he could do in the future. But in donuts, he did a solid job. He got a couple of wins, and that made the fans really happy, especially my friends rooting for him.
I want to stay on the donut competition for a little bit here because this is the one competition that is unique to arenas. I mean, we have this skills challenge in stadiums. We, of course, have freestyle in racing. You don't see the donut competition in a stadium setting. So we're seeing it back in arenas in this one arena event that we had, or weekend, I should say, 5 events during the weekend, where really they got to return to the donut competition. And to be honest, we're not really seeing that many donuts in stadiums anymore. You might throw them in at the end of a freestyle. You might go for one in the skills challenge, but in the grand scheme of things, you're not really seeing that many donuts. And we saw a lot of those stadium drivers show up when it came to the donut competition. Bryce Kenny was there at the top of the average scores. So was Todd LeDuc, Eric Swanson as well. I mean, these guys did not have a lot of donut experience, but they really showed up in the arena. What does that say for these drivers that they can not do a competition for so long and just go right back into it and be successful?
Yeah, since stadiums don't have the donut competition, but these drivers, that are in stadiums fortunately have, the finesse and, the per se space to work with, to do the certain moves that not a lot of arena drivers are able to. So they're able to work with the truck, at its worst and at its best. So they're able to finesse the truck into a smaller space to do, high spinning donuts or, crazy moves like we see Bryce do in past arena shows with that one save he did in Hamilton in, I believe, 2019. So, these stadium guys, whether they're in a stadium or an arena, they show up and show down.
And another thing with it is I just think it comes with the experience that all these drivers have. They've been driving for years, whether it is a different sport or it is monster trucks. And, donut's one of the things that they teach at the university, and it's something that, a monster truck driver should know how to do. And at driving schools that they have for fans to go do, you can do a said donut. And it just proves how good these guys are, and their experience just shines through.
Now moving on to Wayne, and we're going to preview the BKT Tires Freestyle competition here a little bit because Gajewski kind of touched on it with experience. I want to touch on it in a different light. Space awareness. And that is something that they learn at Monster Jam University, but in a little bit of a different way. Because at university, you kind of just have hay bales surrounding the arena pod that you need to try and stay within. And I believe it was Brianna Mahan on Conversations with Scott Douglas talking about it on Tuesday, where she went from university. She was like, okay, I can get the hang of this in the arena setting. And then she goes into an arena with the hockey dashers still up, and she has to try and maintain it in that tiny area. It is so much different. And Todd LeDuc, Bryce Kenny, they haven't been in arenas in a while. Adam Anderson even as well. So Kristen Anderson was really the only company driver coming in, as well as a lot of the independents, really except for David Olfert, who has only competed in Monster Jam Arena events. They needed to get that space awareness down. A couple of them did, but a couple of them had some issues getting that space awareness in.
Yeah, I know, and I think Todd LeDuc was one of them. Like I said before, we saw him flip, unfortunately, and he wanted to try and save it, but, in arenas, you have to be extra careful, and the officials treat you like all the other drivers. He seemed to have a lot of space there, but you can't risk it, and you can't try to pull out a save like that that's so close to the stands. And that goes to show how skilled these arena drivers have to be. You have to have a lot of momentum while staying in a very closed circuit. And I never expected in a million years for Monster Jam to be in these very closed arenas. And neither has all of these old-time fans that have been following the sport for a while. Like, my parents didn't believe it when I first brought them. My mom was like, no, it's going to stink in there. It's going to be gross. They're not going to be able to do anything. They're in there getting huge air. They're doing moonwalks. They're doing mini flips now back in 2020 and 2019. It's insane what these 12,000-pound monster trucks can do. And it shows that what all of the innovation goes into really comes out and gives the fans an amazing show, the drivers and the crew chiefs. And spatial awareness is one of those factors that play a big part into being in an arena.
And moving on to the final competition in all of the events, BKT Tires Monster Jam Freestyle. And David Olfert and Jurassic Attack had the domination there. I mean, I think we might have saw highlights for maybe the best arena freestyle of 2020 and 2021 from David Olfert and Jurassic Attack. I mean, there was no 8-pack backflip there. He couldn't really put that icing on the cake, but I don't even think he needed it. He was flying that Jurassic Attack truck over the hybrid pod.
I think that's probably, to say that with the, proudest of, ways from a fan's perspective, David really, killed it, in re-debuting Jurassic Attack in its, new scheme and its new identity, being represented by Team Throttle Monster and its own. So, it's really cool to see them bring a new piece back, and have David represent in, such a big fashion. He really killed it. I had high hopes. I really wanted him to win overall. He came close a couple times, but, freestyle is where he really shined the most. He had, probably the fastest momentum and biggest air combinations I've seen in arena in quite some time. Tyler's pretty fast in arenas, but David was going big.
And, a lot of stuff helps. He's been running the independent shows for a while now for Team Throttle Monster. And, man, that guy can drive a truck. And him, with his prior experience being a crew guy for monster trucks, and that being his main career, and finally getting the opportunity to drive and showing his knowledge and showing what he's done, and finally getting the big step in being invited to Monster Jam to represent the new Jurassic Attack. He just wanted to show up and show out, and that's definitely what he did.
And Wayne, you guys predicted David Olfert to come home with an overall event championship, and unfortunately he didn't. But I mean, 2 wins in the donut competition, 3 in BKT Tires Freestyle, 5 total wins in competitions over the weekend. That is nothing to laugh about, especially with him. I believe he hasn't competed in a Monster Jam Arena event since fall 2019, and he hasn't competed in a Monster Jam Arena event in that chassis or that truck. This was a huge moment for David Olfert.
It really was, Josh, and he's used to some smaller venues because in the independent scene, you have some of these places you go and you have really close quarters, only a few crush cars, maybe a few ramps. So I think that 2019 arena show, which was a while ago, and also these venues he's been driving at really brought the experience to the arena. He did an incredible job, and like I've been talking about, he's one of the people that has a lot of momentum, and I have a lot of respect for his driving. He has an incredible throttle rhythm, and he wasn't afraid to go big. It's a big compliment when some of the fans I saw commenting thought that this was a fell truck, and they said to keep it in Monster Jam. And I was like, oh boy, David, you did something good, man. That truck is running beautiful, and it showed in the competition with all the wins he got. He's going to be an overall someday. He's going to get a couple of overall wins coming up if he has another chance to do so.
Looking at the average scores for the BKT Tires Freestyle competition, Todd LeDuc was a little bit more consistent. He had an average score of an 8.043. David Olfert an 8.028. But just looking down, Adam Anderson a 7.529, Bryce Kenny 7.033, a 7.423 for Kristen Anderson. She had a great weekend in Monster Jam Freestyle, and she came home with 1 freestyle win, as well as Todd LeDuc coming home with 1 BKT Tires Freestyle win. But just going over freestyle, I mean, it's such a different game than it used to be, and it's such a different game from stadium to arena. I mean, stadium, you have so many more obstacles to hit, so many different combinations. You have that Monster Energy backflip, then you transfer into an arena, specifically here in Salt Lake City, no backflip, less combinations. You really got to be creative, and Chris Anderson, Todd LeDuc, David Olfert, they did that the entire weekend.
For sure, and David definitely did bring some new moves. You know, in two-wheel skills, I saw him do something that I'm pretty sure I haven't seen a truck do, which was he reversed off the pad into a wheelie and popped it into a moonwalk and, you know, rode it out on the nose on top of the pod, which was pretty cool. And in a truck, you know, body style like that is probably pretty hard to do. You know, it's a new body. You don't want to damage it that much, but David didn't care. He wanted to represent Jurassic Attack, and he wanted to do really well for the Monster Jam fans while he was there.
And, you know, just with what you said, going back and forth from stadium to arena, you just got to be able to hit the combinations on the pod, whether you're in two-wheel skills or even in freestyle, being able to reverse off the pad into a wheelie and then carrying maybe the wheelie over the pad, being able to turn around and get some big air. It's just a lot of awareness to be able to do that. And, you know, it's just crazy what these guys can do these guys and women can do in a small setting.
Now, Wayne, we mentioned that difference between a stadium and arena, but how much do you think the experience of Salt Lake City in the freestyle competition specifically is going to help the athletes that now need to transition into the Stadium Championship Series? Adam Anderson, Bryce Kenny, Kristen Anderson, and Todd LeDuc.
I think it's going to be a big help to them because after Arlington in 2020, the last show of 2020, they had some experience from that, but it's been a few months again, and I think this gets them warmed up and shows them what they have to do, what they have to improve in for the shows in Texas and Orlando and any other events being announced, if they will. And it shows them that they have to really up their games. I mean, these drivers are some of the best of the best. They're hired for a reason, and they're going to throw it down. But once again, the stadiums, after a show or two, I think they're going to be back, transitioned, and ready to rock the house.
Now recapping all the overall event championship points. 2 overall wins for Adam Anderson and Megalodon. They both came on Sunday. Your Friday evening overall event champion was Kristen Anderson in Gravedigger. An amazing overall event championship for Kristen. She hasn't gotten one in an arena show or a triple threat event in a good amount of time. Your Saturday afternoon overall event champion, Bryce Kenny, Great Clips Mohawk Warrior. Saturday evening was Todd LeDuc in Monster Energy. So a good sort of I'm completely forgetting the word I'm looking for. A sort of a great spread of overall event championship. A lot of unique athletes there. 4 different overall event champions in 4 different events. The only repeat being Adam Anderson. I mean, I think this is definitely a sign of the times in Monster Jam where anybody can really go out there and grab an overall event championship.
And that's one thing that I love about the evolution of Triple Threat per se and Monster Jam, you know, has really brought arenas to what it is nowadays, you know, as a Monster Jam stadium show in a sense. You know, you can go to an arena and get, you know, the stadium quality that you would if you were to go to World Finals or something like that. And, you know, obviously you don't have the truck, you know, difference there, but you'll get the same, you know, show quality out of it, which is, you know, insane to me. You know, you can put a stadium driver in arenas and, you know, they'll success just as much as an arena driver would do in stadium. So, you know, to have that, you know, kind of back and forth kind of, you know, relationship in a sense is definitely what Monster Jam needs now, and that's going to excel it to, you know, even greater heights in the future.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I have really nothing else much to say about it. You know, Josh hit everything perfectly right there.
Now moving on to the total points for the weekend. This is total accumulated points. So the total overall event championship points that they got over the weekend, event 1 plus event 2 plus event 3 and so on. Adam Anderson and Megalodon walked away with the most overall points accumulated over the weekend with 120. Todd LeDuc and Monster Energy in second with 109. A 3-way tie for third. All with 99 was Bryce Kenny, David Olfert, and Kristen Anderson. And then Eric Swanson, Aaron Basil, and Travis Groth in 6th, 7th, and 8th. But Adam Anderson showing again that he is dominant in Megalodon. And Wayne, looking down the order, Todd LeDuc at 109, and then Bryce Kenny, Kristen Anderson, both at 99, along with David Olfert. I mean, this was a very close weekend in the scope of overall event championship points.
Yeah, and I think it shows you also the skill gap with moving from a stadium to an arena. Adam Anderson and Bryce Kenny have a good amount of experience because in the stadium tour, they go to one arena show, but Todd LeDuc is not quite used to it, and that shows in the overall points after all of these events. But his really good runs and all of his amazing moments come from these stadiums. I think moving on to Texas, we're going to see a lot more wow moments from him and him coming up more in the overall points. But I really love this overall point system, like you guys were talking about before, because back in the day, it used to be always about going for the win. No matter what place you got, you always wanted to get that hardware, get the trophy. And now, moving into the recent years, the past 4 or 5 years, they've had an overall champion from events. And I think that makes drivers, gives them more motivation, because you're going for something other than just an event or competition win, trying to get the overall points, and it's a big thing now.
And now we're going to move on to our top 5 moments from Salt Lake City, beginning with number 5, Adam Anderson's first racing competition win in Megalodon coming on Sunday. Guys, this was a huge moment for Adam Anderson.
Yeah, it was definitely a huge moment, because he has to transition from Graveyard to Megalodon, so that's a big, transition in its own, and it's a whole new change for chassis for him, so he has to get used to the whole shock change and, the whole, sight out of Megalodon, because it's a different beast. Seeing out of the panel van is definitely something different, but seeing out of, the eyes of a shark is pretty cool in its own. So Adam has to transition, and the fact that he got a racing win and 2 overall wins out of it, definitely is a momentum booster to Houston for him.
And the fact that he did it in an arena, where in stadiums he hasn't been able to come in the clutch in that body yet, just shows what kind of a driver he is and how quickly he can adapt.
Now we move on to number 4, Todd LeDuc's racing streak throughout the first 3 events. I mean, Wayne, for a moment there, he was unbeatable in Monster Energy racing, and it is an unprecedented racing streak that we haven't seen in a long time in Monster Jam competition.
Yeah, I think he did an incredible job, and it goes to show that the crew chiefs and the crew behind the scenes set the truck up to be 105%. It shows you he's a really good racer, and coming to the arena, I was really surprised. He did really amazing in the racing competition, but it shows you once again that some drivers, they just have more overall skill, and Todd LeDuc's one of those, but he was a little lower on the charts, but it's due to him coming from stadium to arena. But I think he's going to do just fine going to stadium. He did incredible in racing, and I'm looking forward to what happens in the future with him if he goes to an arena show once again. He's going to take experience from this and improve even more.
Moving on to number 3, David Olfert's Saturday afternoon freestyle. This was the freestyle that we really started to see David Olfert and Jurassic Attack come alive. I mean, we saw him get that rebound off the pod, move it into a small moonwalk, and I mean, this is the freestyle that really said, okay, David Olfert is here to play.
I think that freestyle was the run to set the bar for the other drivers to be like, hey, David Ofer is here in the building, and he's not afraid to put you guys down. Jurassic Attack is here and is here to represent, and David definitely did show out and represented the name well. David, being an independent now, he was a fellow crew chief per se for, a lot of different athletes. So, having that knowledge of what they do and behind the wheel is something that he can, carry over to his driving craft now, and he's definitely excelled behind the wheel at any truck he's driven.
Now moving on to number 2, Kristen Anderson, Saturday afternoon 2-wheel skills. I mean, Josh, this was an amazing 2-wheel skills challenge where Kristen got it up into a wheelie and completely walked it around into a 360. I mean, what a move from Kristen Anderson.
Kristen's been killing it in 2-wheel, and she's just, coming up with some amazing maneuvers. And like I said, she's perfected that Wayne has said, perfecting that popper, and just to be able to throw another little twist into it, just makes it that much more amazing that she was able to do that. And just the fact that she's been able to grow to where now that she can do that almost every time and get that up into the wheelie and try something new, that's awesome.
And the best moment from the weekend, it is number 1 of our top 5, David Olfert's Saturday evening freestyle. And I mean, Wayne, it had big air, it had wow moments, it had a near impossible looking rebound moonwalk out of that. I mean, it was just the perfect 75 seconds of BKT Tires freestyle.
It was an incredible run of freestyle, and I expected it from David. I didn't expect him to go that hard, man. He absolutely dominated that freestyle competition. He gave the fans what they were looking for: big air, momentum, awesome rebound, moonwalk. And you could tell the fans loved it. I was on the Monster Jam TikTok, and it had like 300,000 views in a matter of like 2 days. So the fans loved that move. It was incredible. And it's really what got him the win. He's very skilled, and like we've been talking about, he used to be a crew chief. And as a crew chief, seeing the truck, you know what it could do, what it can't do. And I think that really helps him going onto the track, becoming a driver now for a few years. You really know your self-awareness. And he's been driving for a few years, which really helps him out. He did amazing. I'm looking to see what he could do in the future. And Jurassic Attack's going to keep on rocking.
All right, now it's time for a brand new segment here on the show called Fire or Ice. This is our version of Hot or Not, so to speak, where we're going to throw out an athlete and say, do we think they're on fire or they're on ice, meaning they need to keep going, they are hot, red hot, ready to go, or they need to cool off a little bit and rethink and strategize a bit. And this is the 4 athletes that will be moving on to the Stadium Championship Series. Guys, we'll start with Kristen Anderson. I'll open this up to Josh Tavares, then Josh Gajewski, then we'll go over to Wayne. Do you think Kristen Anderson is fire or ice right now?
In this current time, I think she is hot, because, she came into Salt Lake, maybe a little, off-headed in a sense. She has to, come into this season knowing that she's in her element. The stadium guys have to come to her element. So she has to, pretty much backtrack her game plan. She doesn't want to, overdrive. She wants to, represent Gravedigger well, but she also wants to, dominate in her setting. So coming into Salt Lake, she had to really, digress racing. Racing wasn't really her, forte that weekend. Todd pretty much dominated that. So coming into Houston and the further shows in stadium, she has to really, adapt to the stadium setting of racing if she wants to excel. But in two-wheel skills and freestyle, she's pretty killer in that competition. So I think she'll have somewhat of a confidence boost there.
And I'm going to go ahead and also piggyback what he said. I think she's fire right now. Just showing what she did in Arlington, she showed that glitz and glamour, like little specks, and sprinkled in some stuff to where she can be a stadium driver. And I think she can be very good at it. It's just she's got to get the reps, and she's only been in a few stadiums this far in her career. So, she's only going to get better.
I think Kristen Anderson is fire right now. You saw her come off of so many wins on the Arena Series stop for Salt Lake City. Not really series, but it was one stop. And she did an incredible job with what she had. She showed her arena skills. And we saw Arlington. She did a very solid job. I think she has a few things to learn about these stadium shows. There's more of a skill gap with all the drivers coming from an arena show to a stadium show. So she's definitely going to have to up her game in the stadiums. She had some unfortunate luck in Arlington, but I think if she comes with a good mindset and she has a little practice, I think she could have a good run and great overall weekends.
Moving on to Adam Anderson in Megalodon. Guys, do you think he's fire or ice right now behind the wheel of Megalodon?
I think Adam is fire as well. Adam carrying that momentum of the 2 overall wins, the last 2 Sunday events, is definitely something Adam can say that he's proud of. Getting, used to the new chassis and the shock setting again, is definitely something that Adam has to quickly adapt to. And it's a difference for him because his Gravedigger chassis is so long and its wheelbase is so, different from normal CRD chassis that every other fellow driver would run. So for him to change that quickly and pick up, 2 overall wins is definitely something Adam is proud to say that his 15 or 16 years of experience behind the wheel is something that he can carry over into Houston.
Oh, yeah, and I'm going to have to agree. I'm going to have to agree with the fire on that. He's definitely going to be red hot heading back into these stadiums. It's Adam Anderson. He's got 5 or 6 world titles. He's got them for a reason. He's one of the best drivers in Monster Jam for a reason. That's why he's put in the position that he's in. And I definitely think that he's going to be able to overcome the obstacles that Megalodon chassis is giving him.
I think Adam Anderson is going to be spicy fire. He's did pretty good in the arena show. He did good in Arlington. He had a few crashes here and there. I think going into Texas, he's going to have a good shot at getting a few wins and maybe an overall or 2. We saw here in the Arena Series he was able to do it. It surprised a lot of fans because I didn't expect him to come from stadiums to arena in a brand new truck and chassis and be able to take home an overall. And he did it. It surprised the fans, surprised me. And I think he has what it takes to take home a Stadium Series overall or possibly a couple wins too.
And I'm going to really quickly echo what all of you said about each of the athletes there. Kristen and Adam, both fire in my opinion, and they're looking dead set on joining Ryan Anderson, joining the rest of the athletes on the Stadium Championship Series. This next one, I'm expecting a little bit of different answers around the room because we're moving on to Bryce Kenny and the Great Clips Mohawk Warrior. Do you think he's fire or ice right now coming out of Salt Lake City?
As much as I want to say fire, he's been icy the last couple, events that he was in Salt Lake. Bryce did have a lot of momentum from Arlington. He definitely opened a lot of people's eyes there, winning racing and the two-wheel skills challenge in Arlington. He had a lot of momentum, regardless of, any competition he was put through. I think even though he did win an overall in Salt Lake, he didn't really show out like we really wanted him to. Yes, he got put into a smaller setting he's not used to, but you got to adapt to that. And, if you really want to win, you got to put that, switch off and just go for it.
I'm going to have to second Josh on the ice. Go off what he said. I think he's very hit or miss when it comes to his driving style. He'll have one really great event here, and then the next event he will be tumbling down the track and won't even get any more points the rest of the night. So, he's going to have to regroup and rethink his attack on the track.
Well, I'm going to third what all the boys have said. I'm going to go with icy. And the reason being, we saw that Bryce Kenny wasn't as consistent as all the other drivers during Salt Lake City. And it's not his fault. He's going from a stadium to an arena, and it's really hard to transfer over to a small venue, like I've been saying a few times, and all of us have. But I think coming out of Salt Lake City, taking home one overall, which was pretty good for him, it got his motivation up. I think he's going to be fire going into the stadium stops because that's really where he shines. You see these incredible saves. He had an incredible racing performance in Arlington. He did amazing in skills, and he had a solid freestyle event too, giving us a wow moment into the container stack. Hopefully he doesn't do that again. We'll see what he does. Looking forward to it.
And I like what all of you said. I think Bryce Kenny right now is on the ice side, but not by much. I mean, his stats in Salt Lake City were a little bit middle of the road, but we saw him in Arlington really prevail. I mean, we saw the best Bryce Kenny I think we've seen of his career in Arlington in a stadium setting. So I think once we get into Houston, he's going to start to really regroup himself and be that dominant athlete that we're used to seeing out of Bryce Kenny. Final athlete that will be moving from Salt Lake City to the Stadium Championship Series, Todd LeDuc in Monster Energy. Do you think he's fire or ice right now coming out of Salt Lake City?
I mean, what else can I say? Todd is fire regardless, of any venue or show you put him in. Todd is there to represent Monster Energy well, and he's also there to make sure the fans leave happy. He's a showman, like I said last time on the last episode of Teardown. He's there to represent, and he's there to, make sure that not only is he going to come out with an overall win, but he also wants to make sure that, it's a consistent, lead in the points lead. So, coming from 2020 and 2019 past champions, he wants to make sure 2021 is no different.
I'm going to have to say he's going to be fire in racing. He did amazing in Salt Lake and racing. We're racking up that record, and he's always been amazing in racing in stadiums. But I think he's very hit or miss when it comes to two-wheel and freestyle. He'll have one two-wheel maneuver where he does it good, and then he goes the next one, and then he rolls over. And then same thing with freestyle. He'll start to have something going, and then just as he's getting ready to kick it up a notch, he'll tip over, and his night's ruined. So I say he's fire in racing. I think he needs to kind of take a step back and rethink his attack in two-wheel and freestyle and try to get those down, because once he does, I think nobody's stopping him, like, at all.
I think Todd LeDuc right now is on fire. He took home one overall from Salt Lake City, and now going into the Houston shows in Orlando. I think he's pumped up. He wants to get more wins. He wants to show the fans that he's the most dominant driver out there. And that's the ambition that Todd LeDuc has. He wants to be number one, and he's a showman like you guys were saying. So he's out there to take home the win. And if he can't do it, at least try and get that overall. I think Todd LeDuc's going to be on fire coming into the Stadium Series.
Yeah, I definitely think Todd LeDuc is fire as well. But I do think Gajewski was onto something there, where we have seen him sort of a little bit weary and sort of middle of the pack in two-wheel and freestyle when it comes to the stats side of things. That if he can get those down, I think he's going to be a great run for the Stadium Championship Series championship. But that's a story for the next episode when we preview that. But guys, final thoughts from Salt Lake City. Great 5-event weekend, a great return for Monster Jam in arenas. We'll go around the table with this. What did you guys take away from Salt Lake City, and what are you looking forward to for the future Monster Jam arena events?
I've heard a lot of, naysayers say that, the arena shows that were in Salt Lake, were kind of, on the downside because there was no mini flip. But in my opinion, there was no need for a mini flip because these drivers showed out and did the best that they could. And they pretty much put on the best performances I've seen in arenas, events and past, shows in quite some time. So David Olfert definitely represented Jurassic Attack well. Bryce Kenny, he was on a lackluster side. He did pick up an overall, but I expect him to do really well in Houston. And Todd LeDuc, he's always consistent, and I hope he carries that momentum into Houston as well. A lot of these drivers that were in, Salt Lake will be competing in the Points Championship Series for the stadium. So hopefully we can see these drivers do really well.
I think it was a great weekend. It was the perfect storm for Monster Jam to be able to come back with our pandemic that's going on right now. They kind of eased into it. They didn't have the mini flip there. They wanted the trucks to be able to run almost every competition when they were able to. To maximize the time that they had out there, being 5 events, that's a lot of time you're going to see them on the track. But I think they did it in a way that was just perfect.
I think Salt Lake City went very well. I think it was smart that they didn't have the mini flip because they want to keep the damage very minimal. Salt Lake City, that is. Now, I believe that we had the most consistent shows there from any other arena show. Kristen Anderson was showing a lot of consistency with her her skills runs and all of her other freestyle moments and crazy action from the weekend. And all the drivers did incredible. Adam Anderson got a couple of overalls. Bryce Kenny did amazing. David Olfert, Eric Swanston did good. Kristen Anderson popped off. Todd LeDuc did great. And Travis and Aaron, they did pretty good. So anyhow, I think it was a great show. I think it was smart of them not to include the mini flips so they can maximize profit, bring back more Monster Jam events near you guys so that everybody can enjoy seeing these 12,000-pound beasts in real life. And especially, I love the pit party that they had. Drivers were able to interact with the fans through a speaker system and also through tempered glass and stuff like that. And it was still incredible being able to see the driver and talk to them like it's on a walkie-talkie, like you're a little official. So it was an amazing weekend. I had a blast watching it. Wish there were more Facebook streams, and looking forward to the Stadium Series.
That's going to do it for this episode of the Monster Jam Teardown. Make sure you tune into the next episode. We'll be releasing the week of the first Houston weekend, where we will cover the preview of the Stadium Championship Series as it makes its return to Monster Jam. For Wayne Chiaki, Joshua Tavares, Josh Gajewski, I am Joshua Lee. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope to see you again. This is Monster Jam.